I'm Desmond Shawe-Taylor, Surveyor of the Queen's Pictures, and one of the paintings which I've chosen for an exhibition of treasures at the Queen's Gallery in Holyrood is this magnificent portrait by Rembrandt of Agatha Bas. This is a portrait painted at the height of Rembrandt's powers in 1641. That's a year before he painted his famous Night Watch, when he was the most successful portrait painter in Amsterdam, but also the most inventive and innovative portrait painter in Europe. The first thing that you notice about Rembrandt's portraiture is that he is extremely anxious to recreate an effect of reality, literal, tactile reality. And you see this in an illusionistic device. He's painted his portrait as if there is a dark, ebonized wood frame just inside the frame of the painting and made of a similar material to the original frame. However, Rembrandt's interest in illusionism at this date is a very, very double-edged sword, because while the lace, the fan, and the drapery has this very intense and very sharp and crisp reality, you notice that the depiction of the face is much more veiled and elusive and subtle. In particular, he's very anxious to show a pattern of light and reflected light, so that almost no surface of the face is rendered simply with an outline and a light side and a dark side. Always there are areas of reflected light and nuances of light and shadow, which create the effect that the skin is very luminous and very soft, so it's very flattering to the sitter, but they also create the effect that the face is perhaps something a little bit more subtle and more ambiguous or unknowable than a piece of lace or a fan or the mundane reality of clothes. And it's possible, I think, to suggest that that's moving towards the idea that the depiction of a face might be something a little bit more mysterious and a little bit more spiritual than the depiction of simple drapery. If you look at the light in this painting, it's clear that the sitter is moving forwards into a bright light source, which is picking out the whites of her underdress and lace, very, very clearly illuminating it. And yet at the same time, if you look particularly at her hair, and certainly at the background, you see that it's consumed in darkness, it sinks into darkness. And that isn't really a very rational way of depicting light. If there was this much light around here, some of it would manage to find its way back into the distance. And this is a trick, this sort of irrational use of light is a trick which Rembrandt uses often in his paintings. And it allows him to create this very, very steep gradient between the lit part of the painting and the dark part of the painting. The lit part usually at the front and the dark part usually towards the rear of the picture plane. And in that steep gradient, you get the sense of the figure is almost being swallowed up by darkness. And it allows him also to create these very striking contrasts between the precision and distinctness of the depiction of the fabric and the veiled, mysterious character of the cloudy depiction of the sitter's hair, for example. The interesting question is, what is Rembrandt achieving by this very contrasted alternation of extremely intense, literal-minded reality, fan that you seem to be able to touch, the very precise dress, this veiled, soft and ambiguous depiction of reality apparently sinking into darkness. I would suggest that the idea is that in depicting a human being, he wishes to contrast those things which are indeed tactile and absolutely simply apprehensible, the bulk of the person, the physical presence of the person, which is often expressed through clothes, and at the same time wishes to suggest something a little bit more unknowable, a little bit more mysterious about a person. The other aspect of this portrait which is very interesting is the way in which it depicts a wife in 1641. Her position, I think, is exactly what you would not expect. She is not turning towards her husband. She is not looking remotely coquettish. She looks extremely powerful and determined and stares directly at the spectator. That is a position, a way of depicting the face, which is extremely rare even for men, but for women it's almost unheard of. It tells you something about her character, that she's a force to be reckoned with. Not that we know anything else about her except the evidence of this portrait, but I think it also tells you something about the role of women in 17th century Dutch society, which put simply, that they were massively more empowered than women elsewhere in Europe at this date, and indeed it took a couple of centuries for the rest of Europe to catch up, perhaps exemplified by the fact that this sitter would have been known, and this painting is known as Agatha Bas. This is a married woman, that is her maiden name.